Hi. As you can see, this talk is going to be about altruism, and I would like to start off with a definition of altruism, since there are many different definitions in the literature, and the definition that we adhere to is one given by Batson already early on in 1987, and he argues that true altruism should be defined as helping directed towards the ultimate goal of enhancing other people's welfare. And that is, he really emphasizes the motivational aspect of it. So altruism is not altruism because you help someone and you do not benefit by it. Altruism is that you want to help someone with a final goal to actually help this person. And if you try to help the person, but if you fail, this can still be altruism. It's independent of the outcome, right? Okay, so does true altruism actually exist? This is a very old and very important question that many people, many scholars have asked themselves. Philosophers have asked this question. Economists have also wondered about the altruism question. Sociologists as well, and also psychologists. And what I would really like to be clear about here is that we do not want to try to test the altruism question. So this is really not about whether altruism exists in reality or whether it does not exist. That's what these guys have debated, and they did not come to a sufficient conclusion, I would guess. But what we are interested in is in what lay people believe about the existence of altruism. So does the typical American person or the typical German person, does he or she believe that altruism exists or not? And do these beliefs have any real-life implications? In particular, we have three research questions. The first question is about prevalence. How do lay people answer the altruism question? That is, do people generally believe that altruism exists, or do they believe that altruism does not exist? And this is a purely descriptive question, of course, but I find this interesting to begin with, since even in our research team we had heavy disagreements about that. Some members argued that everyone will believe in altruism, so this is not an individual difference variable, and we do not even need to start with this research, whereas others argued that no one will believe in altruism. So I guess, well, for me at least, this was an interesting question to start with. Another research question was whether people who believe in the existence of true altruism actually possess more moral character. Is it, for example, possible that people who believe that altruism does exist act more pro-socially than people who do not believe in the existence of altruism? And finally, what might be the process driving this link between the belief in true altruism and actual helping? Okay. Let's start with the basics. Let's start with the prevalence. When personality psychologists wonder about the prevalence of beliefs, what they generally do, I guess, is to construct a self-report measure. And specifically when it comes to beliefs, the self-report method seems to be very suitable. So here's how we constructed our belief in the existence of true altruism, or beta scale. We started out with 16 candidate items. These are examples, and I'm going to read them, and they are examples that made it in the final scale. We humans have the potential to act with pure altruism without expecting any personal benefits for ourselves. Human beings are fully capable of genuinely loving and caring about other people without expecting anything in return. Positively scored items both. Then there are two negative ones as well. All our human concern for others is motivated by underlying selfish reasons. And everything humans do for other people is motivated by self-interest of one kind or another. Okay. We asked participants to respond to these items on 7-point rating scale. So we chose a continuous rating scale here. From 1, this statement is absolutely wrong, in my opinion, to 7, this statement is absolutely right, in my opinion. And we followed a large tradition on beliefs here. For example, the belief in God is generally measured with continuous rating scales. The belief in free will is also measured with continuous rating scales. Just world beliefs is another example, and so forth. Okay, now in the first empirical step, we needed to condense these 16 items to a subset of most suitable items to assess our general and global belief in the existence of true altruism. For that reason, we ran two so-called exploratory factor analyses, one of these in the US and the other one in Germany. And what we basically find is that there are two factors in both of these samples. The first factor only includes the positively scored items, and the second factor only the negatively scored items. And based on theory, really these two sets of items, they should be opposites of each other. So the fact that we got a two-factor structure, we attributed to a method factor. And for that reason, we focused on a single non-rotated factor solution and chose the 5 positively scored items from that single factor that loaded highest on this factor, and the 5 negatively scored items. That is, at the end, we basically arrived at a 10-item scale, 5 positively scored items and 5 negatively scored items. We next ran in 2 different samples, so-called confirmatory factor analyses. And I'm not getting into the details now, but what these results suggest is that the scale is doing quite a decent job. Okay, and these are really now our descriptive results. What you can see here is the frequency distribution. Down here is basically the score of participants, which in principle can range between 1 and 7, since we have a 7-point rating scale. And here you see the frequency of how many participants scored, for example, at a 4, which is the midpoint of the scale. And what you can see is that across the 4 samples that we've started to look at, the mean value is somewhat above the midpoint of the scale, suggesting that people tend to believe that altruism seems to exist. But we also see, and I think that's quite important, that there's a rather large standard deviation of about 1.3. And that suggests that individuals differ, at least here. We don't know yet whether it's a stable individual difference, but at least here on this one-shot assessment, they differ in their response to our questions rather widely. So to draw a very quick interim conclusion, how do lay people answer the altruism question? It seems that most people indeed believe that altruism might be a distinct possibility, but we also find that there are considerable, well, I call them individual differences already. We have to see whether these are stable differences that we can observe here. Okay, now the second question is whether people who score high or low on our beta scale possess more moral character. And this, of course, leads to the question, how can we measure moral character? And we've heard a lot about this in this symposium. What we've done is we took a behavioral approach, and we wanted to assess different kinds of behaviors that should all basically point towards moral character, and we wanted to be as broad as possible, and for that reason we drew on philosophy, economy, sociology, and psychology. In all our studies, for example, we have administered a retrospective self-report measure of behaviors. It's a very frequently used measure in psychology, the Rushton, he calls it altruism scale, but it's a measure of helping behavior over the last half year. That's the time span that we chose. In sociology, many people ask about civic engagement, social engagement, also self-reports and dichotomous measures, and we used one widely used measure here. Philosophers talk a lot about moral decision-making, and we had 4 different vignettes, and participants had to decide whether they want to choose the self-serving option in this hypothetical scenario, which would be to the benefit of the self but not to others, or the other favoring option, which would benefit others but not the self. Now in economy, the dictator game and the trust game are these game theory-related games which are often used to get at helping behavior or at moral character in our terminology. And we use that in study 7. And in study 7, we also used a 6th indicator from psychology, which is basically how much participants are willing or actually do donate a part of their participant money to charity. And now, based on all these diverse indicators, what we've done is we followed an approach that is well known in intelligence research, and we took a G factor, and I called that G character. So that's basically the idea that this is the underlying personality trait that drives all that behavior. Okay, and we are now basically working with that G character variable in all our studies. Okay, to quickly give you the results of the relation between the belief in true altruism and G character, or actual helping. What we find is in all 7 studies is that there's a positive relation. So people who believe that altruism exists tend to be more pro-social than people who do not believe in the existence of altruism. And this is a very robust finding. And overall, you can see here with 1,800 participants, we get this effect. It's not a huge effect, small to medium effect, but it's a robust one. Okay. So who possesses more moral character? As it seems, those people who do believe in the existence of moral character actually behave more morally. This, of course, poses the question why this is the case. And I'm sure that there are many different processing variables at play, but the processing variable I want to focus on right now, and that came out clearest so far in our results, is the thing that people who believe in the existence of altruism, that they believe that humans are good people and therefore are worthy of being helped, and that's why they actually help them. Okay. That's what I just said. So why should naive Rousseaus believe that humans are more worthy of help? Well, there's a very large tradition in philosophy linking altruism with being good-natured and egoism with being bad-natured. Aristotle was perhaps one of the first to make this link explicit. Bentham also talks about this link, and is quite disappointed that in his philosophy he has to come to the conclusion that humans are not capable of altruism. And this disappointment basically illustrates how strong the link in his mind was between being a good person and being altruistic, and not being a good person and egoism. There's an exception, Nietzsche. He turned the whole thing around and he said, well, the good thing is egoism and the bad thing is altruism. But I think that the general public, lay people, really do not endorse Nietzsche's position here. Okay. Well, we tried to measure that opinion or belief with a 6-item scale. Here are 2 example items. Humans deserve to be cared for in times of need, or humans are bad by nature, making it worthless to help them. It's a reverse scored item. And we ran a couple of psychometric tests on this 6-item scale, and the scale seems to perform decently well. Together then, the hypothesis would be that people who believe in the existence of true altruism, they would come to believe that humans are more worthy of help since they're so great beings, and that then in the end should lead them to actually help people more than people who do not believe that humans are worthy. And in fact, we had our process measure in 3 of our 7 studies. And we find in each of these studies links suggestive of our process model. And when we look at a mediation result, we also find that this indirect path from the belief in the existence of true altruism via the belief that humans are worthy of help on moral character is significant. But of course, these are correlational data, so it's difficult to draw, or even inappropriate to draw firm causal conclusions. But also what we've done is we had in our study 7 was a longitudinal study. Oh, let me quickly just say that in all these analyses we controlled for communion, which is a broad personality factor very similar to agreeableness, and the results remain unchanged. So this is not a simple, it's communion-driven or agreeableness-driven result. Okay, so what I was saying is our 7th study was, in fact, a longitudinal study. And here we had 320 participants at wave 1, 6 months later, we asked our participants to come back in the lab, and 255 of them did. And another 6 months later, we had 220 participants back. But the third wave just finished last week, so I do not have the results of that yet, but I do have the results of the first 2 waves. And let me also say that we got a bit of funding from a German funding agency now to double the sample size. And I think this is important because as it stands, the sample size is not all that impressive, but I think we will be able to draw firmer conclusions with about 600 participants overall. Okay, so this is like the first bit of our process model. What we see is that the belief in true altruism over time predicts one-sidedly the belief that people are worthy of help. So that's consistent with our model. Also consistent with our model is the second part. We see that the belief that people are worthy of help actually leads over time to actual helping. So we have to wait basically the third wave analyses and then the doubling of the sample size in order to be sure that our process model works out the way we imagine it to work out, we hope it to work out. But as it stands, there is evidence suggesting that people who believe in the existence of true altruism help more because they believe that humans are such great beings that they are really deserving of their help. Okay, so let me quickly summarize. First of all, the prevalence. We have seen that the belief in true altruism seems to be an individual difference variable, and we've seen that most people are inclined to believe that true altruism exists, but we've also seen that this is normally distributed, that belief. Furthermore, we have seen very consistently across 7 studies that people who believe in the existence of true altruism possess more moral character based on these behavioral measures of character. And finally, evidence suggests that the reason why they behave more morally is that they think humans are so great beings that they deserve help more. And with this, I would like to thank you very much.
So I'm not sure, I didn't see the specific number on your slide, but in the 2 waves that you have, yeah. So if you think of your character as behavior, helping, so helping didn't lead to increased beliefs that people are worthy of help. Yeah. Does that go against either self-perception theory or cognitive dissonance theory? Is that surprising to you that helping is?
Let me show you another thing. That's basically the relation between the belief in true altruism, the longitudinal relation, and actual helping. And this seems to be bidirectional. And these 2 effects are certainly not significantly different, so I'm not sure what to make out of it. It's either just not significant or just significant, but let's await the doubling of the sample size to be sure about this. And from that perspective, I think that would be consistent with self-perception theory, yeah.
I think this is really interesting. I'm wondering a little bit about the measurement of the belief in true altruism, because it seems like you have some items there that are getting at the belief in, is this possible at all? And others of them, so when you say all human actions are motivated by self-interest, if I deny that, all I'm saying is I think it's possible sometimes. But some of your items also have this kind of generalization feels of them, like humans are like this, people are like this, and I might believe in the possibility of true altruism, but not really agree too much with that because I think it's rare or something like that.
Okay.
I guess I'm just curious whether you think either one of those 2 things matters more in predicting.
Like the thing we want to get at is certainly whether people think that it's theoretically possible. Well, like that humans have the capacity, even if no one has ever done it. At least if there's the capacity, that's what we want to get at. And you're right. So I have to double check the items. If this is a worry, I have to choose different items. But we have 10 items, and really what you need is 2 or 3 items. These are like. That's enough. So I'm sure we can get the right items, but I will look at this as soon as I'll have the next one.
But even if it were pronouns, it would still be sort of interesting.
It would be interesting, yes. Yes. Yeah, it would be a bit of a different thing, but you're right. Yeah.
curious about what your thoughts about the reverse cause and direction. That if I'm a person of good character, I know my internal life better, and I know that I do something that looks more altruistic, whether you think that cause and direction could be operating here at all as well.
But the way I imagine basically this path to work is that might be a self-enhancement effect. So that if I am a person who helps for whatever reason, perhaps because I'm in a situation or constantly in situations where I'm pressured to help, and if I have high self-esteem, I guess I can squeeze, or if I have a high self-esteem motivation, I can squeeze self-esteem out of making myself believe that must be all altruistic why I act like that, because with that I show myself what a good person I am, and therefore tap myself on the shoulder. One of the processes, but I'm sure that there are 20, I don't know, 50 processes operating there leading to this relation. Yeah, this is a big thing for the future to see what other processes there are in. And in this data set we have additional measures and we can look at them. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, were there gender differences, age differences? Who believes in true altruism?
Yes. Okay. Nothing with gender, nothing with age. Nothing at all.
What was the age distribution of your sample?
These were like internet samples, so there are, it's not only undergraduates, but we don't have enough 80-plus-year-olds to say something about them. But I think there are sufficient people who work and who are like between 30 and 50 or so, at least across all 7 samples. So this is interesting for me because these are like other major beliefs, and in a way our belief in true altruism seems to be rather isolated from other major beliefs. I would have betted that that the belief in God or religiosity in general would be more strongly related to that, but it doesn't seem to be that case. This is very consistent across the 4 samples. So basically here, there is a bit of a difference between the US and Germany, right? So in the US, true altruism in this one sample does not relate to the belief in God, just world, free will. Same thing in the second sample. Down here, at least here with the belief in God in Germany, there is a positive relation. So maybe Germans have a more, I don't know, positive idea of religiosity, less punishing idea than in the US. I don't know. Yeah,
yeah, I was surprised how stable that is as a belief.
Yeah,
you correct that for measurement like error, because that's like
yeah,
observed values and it's like really like a trait, right? So
yeah.
have you
Yeah.
looked at the overlap with agreeableness? Is there any?
Yeah, basically, we have control for communion, so that was the time when I was fully focused on communion. But they are very highly correlated, agreeableness and communion, and it's not really a high correlation. It doesn't change our results.
Yeah.
So it's 0.3 or so, 0.2, 0.3. So it's really a different thing.
And my other question was whether you have also measured not only how often people show altruistic behaviors themselves, but experienced altruistic acts, like maybe shown to themselves and think they
That's
are also
great.
a worthy
I did not
person.
think of that at all before, but that's good, yeah. Yeah. Because one thing we have not basically looked at yet is where does these beliefs come from to begin with? And attachment style was a thing we had in the grant proposal to begin with, but that didn't work out. I was thinking that if you had very secure attachments with your parents, you might basically think, oh, these people, they're caring, and you don't have the cognitive capacities still to understand that does not necessarily have to be altruistic, and therefore attribute this to the existence of altruism. Yeah, but this is a great suggestion.
Do you have any more slides?
Unfortunately not. Just the 2 I have.
So something related to that, you don't have a slide on like, the measurement model for G character? So like
basically, okay, so what we've done is we ran an exploratory factor analysis on the 6 measures, and then we saved the first factor. So to get, in my understanding of what that does, to get basically rid of the non-overlapping variance. Right?
How high were those factor loadings?
Sorry?
How high were the factor loadings?
Not so high. This is diverse, about 0.3 or so. But they're all positively and about I don't know, not less than 0.25. That I'm sure. I think 0.3 to 0.45, something like that.
Have you thought about including other things in that second step instead of believing that humans are worthy of help that might help account for why sometimes people who don't believe in these altruism still help? So the opposite of believing that humans are worthy of help, but like, why would you help if you didn't believe that? Then you could account for some of that noise.
Very interesting. Yeah. Well, we have a couple of other variables in there, including the others inclusion, the self measure. That doesn't do anything at all.
Or maybe if you're consequential, like consequentialist beliefs, or I don't know, like what, if you're really extremely low on belief in the existence of altruism, but you still help, maybe if you could explain that, what that mediating belief is, that might help.
Yeah, I think, obviously I'm not a philosopher, but the utilitarianists, wouldn't they? They would basically say there is no altruism there, but they would still believe in the good of helping. So
that if it does more good than it costs you, then that's what you should do, even if people don't necessarily deserve it. So.
Yeah, or in the long run, even if it costs you now, in the long run it might work out in a positive way. And so, yeah. And I think that even Batson would readily state that most of our helping acts are not motivated in an altruistic fashion. So I think it's quite consistent that people who do not believe in altruism might help. They might even help more than people who believe in altruism, perhaps because they think, well, actually, someone else might then start helping us, I don't know. But this is not what we find, of course. So, yeah.